Westminster has just witnessed a total rupture in the fabric of government, a moment of sudden and violent political dislocation that threatens to shatter Keir Starmer's premiership permanently. In a calculated strike that insiders are already calling the single most devastating intervention of the year, Nigel Farage has walked into the fragile ecosystem of Parliament and detonated a narrative bomb that has left the Prime Minister's authority in absolute ruins. What was, only hours ago, a government struggling with discipline has now descended into open, uncontainable chaos. The atmosphere in the lobby is frantic, thick with the scent of panic and the undeniable realization that control has been lost. This is not merely a bad news cycle, it is a collapse of the command structure itself. Farage did not just criticize policies, he exposed a vacuum at the heart of number 10, creating a spectacle of weakness that has sent Labour backbenchers into a state of terrified paralysis. The trigger was ruthless in its timing. With the government already reeling from weeks of internal friction and policy missteps, Farage chose the precise moment of maximum vulnerability to deliver a blistering public indictment that stripped away the Prime Minister's remaining veneer of competence. He didn't just speak to the press, he effectively declared the government illegitimate, framing Starmer not as a leader, but as a passenger in his own administration, drifting helplessly toward disaster. The reaction was instantaneous. Reports from the tea room suggest that Labour MPs, usually whipped into silence, are now openly questioning the survival of the current leadership team. The discipline that held the party together is evaporating before our eyes, replaced by a frantic scramble for self-preservation. This is the nightmare scenario Downing Street feared most, an external attack that resonates so deeply it causes an internal implosion. But then the situation escalated. As Farage's words began to circulate through the corridors of power, the Prime Minister's response, halting, defensive, and visibly rattled, only served to confirm the accusation. Instead of a strong rebuttal, the nation saw a leader caught in the headlights, seemingly overwhelmed by the sheer force of the narrative mounting against him. It was a visual confirmation of weakness that no spin doctor can erase. The momentum has shifted violently. Starmer is no longer setting the agenda. He is chasing it, desperately trying to plug leaks in a ship that is taking on water faster than his team can bail it out. The psychological impact of this moment cannot be overstated. Authority is a fragile illusion, and tonight, that illusion has been shattered. The government is not governing. It is reacting, flinching at every shadow, terrified of where the next blow will land.
Subscribe now if you want to track this collapse as it happens, because the speed of events is accelerating beyond anyone's predictions. What we are witnessing is the removal of the safety net. For months, the uneasy truce within the Labour Party held because there was no viable alternative narrative. But Farage has just provided one. He has given voice to the whisper that was already circulating in the private dining rooms of Westminster, that the Prime Minister is not up to the task, that the crises are multiplying, and that there is no plan to stop the rot. This is no longer about policy disagreements. It is about the primal political question of strength versus weakness. And right now, the Prime Minister looks terminally weak. The sharks are circling, not just from the opposition benches, but from within his own ranks. The silence from senior cabinet ministers is deafening, a tactical pause as they wait to see if the leader can survive the night or if the slide into oblivion has become irreversible. The chaos inside the parliamentary estate has reached a fever pitch that veteran observers describe as unprecedented in this parliament. Behind the heavy oak doors of committee rooms, the shouting matches are no longer being suppressed. They are spilling out into the hallways, a cacophony of blame and recrimination that signals the total breakdown of party order. Whips are reportedly running from office to office, attempting to enforce lines to take, but they are being ignored by MPs who can smell the smoke of a burning administration. The fear is palpable. It is the specific, sharp fear of politicians who realize that their leader has become an anchor, dragging them down into the depths. Sources close to the 1922 committee and their Labour counterparts describe a mood that has shifted from concern to active plotting. Phones are glowing in dark corners, encrypted messages are flying between factions, and the loyalty that was once assumed is now being renegotiated in real time. What makes this unraveling so catastrophic is the total lack of a defensive strategy from number 10. They were prepared for policy debates. They were prepared for economic arguments. They were not prepared for a visceral, emotional assault on their competence that bypassed the brain and went straight for the gut. Starmer's team appears paralyzed, locked in emergency meetings that produce nothing but silence, while the narrative outside runs wild. Every hour that passes without a commanding response is another nail in the coffin of his authority. We are hearing reports of junior ministers threatening resignation, not over principle, but out of sheer panic, a desire to distance themselves from a leadership that looks like it is entering its terminal phase. The glue that holds a government together is the belief that the prime minister is in charge. That belief is gone. It has been replaced by the spectacle of a man shouting orders that no one is obeying.
And here is what makes it worse. The sharks smell blood. Farage's intervention has emboldened every critic, every rival, and every dissenter who had been biding their time. They see a prime minister who was unable to defend himself, unable to control the narrative, and unable to command his troops. The barrier of fear that protects a leader has fallen. Backbenchers are now giving anonymous quotes to journalists that would have been unthinkable a week ago, describing the operation inside Downing Street as a morgue and the strategy as non-existent. The breakdown is total. It is systemic. It is the sort of rot that starts at the head and infects the entire body politic within hours. We are watching a government cease to function as a cohesive unit and dissolve into a collection of warring tribes, each looking out for their own survival in the face of an oncoming storm. This is the definition of a political tailspin. One event triggers a reaction, which triggers a panic, which triggers a collapse. The feedback loop is now self-sustaining. Starmer cannot stop it because he is the cause of it. His very presence, his demeanor, his inability to seize the moment is fueling the fire. He is fighting a ghost, thrashing against a narrative that has already solidified in the minds of his MPs. He is losing control. The whispers are turning into roars. The glances across the chamber are becoming stares of open contempt. The machinery of government grinds on, but the spirit has left the machine. What remains is a hollow shell, waiting for the final push that will topple it completely. The panic is not just about the next election, it is about the next 24 hours. Can they hold the line? Can they stop the bleeding? The answer, echoing from every corner of Westminster tonight, seems to be a resounding no. Beyond the frantic bubble of Westminster, the shockwaves of this collapse are hitting the public with the force of a revelation. Ordinary people who have watched with growing frustration as their concerns are sidelined now see a government that is not only distant but actively disintegrating. Farage's attack resonated because it tapped into a deep, subterranean lake of anger that has been building for months. Anger at a system that feels broken, at leaders who feel artificial, and at a status quo that offers no solutions. When the prime minister loses control of his party, the public perceives it as losing control of the country. The image of chaos in Parliament is not just political gossip to the voter in the Midlands or the North. It is proof that the people in charge have no idea what they are doing. The betrayal feels personal. It feels like a breach of the basic contract. We give you power, and you provide stability. That contract lies in shreds. The mood on the streets is shifting from apathy to outrage. Social media is ablaze, not with complex policy analysis, but with the raw, unfiltered emotion of a populace that feels leaderless. The footage of Starmer's faltering response is being shared millions of times, becoming a meme of incompetence, a digital monument to failure. It confirms every suspicion the public held, that this administration was built on sand. Farage, in his strike, didn't just hurt the prime minister, he validated the feelings of millions of voters who felt ignored. He signaled to them that their perception of chaos was real, that the emperor truly has no clothes. This is dangerous territory for any government. Once the public decides a leader is weak, no amount of policy announcements or press releases can change that verdict. It is a stain that does not wash out. Meanwhile, the disconnect grows wider. While MPs panic about their careers, the country watches a spectacle of self-indulgence.
The anger is directed at the entire political class, but it focuses like a laser on the man at the top. The perception is cementing. Starmer is not fighting for the people. He is fighting for his political life, and he is losing. This is the moment where the political crisis becomes a moral one. It is no longer just about who wins the next vote. It is about whether the government has the moral authority to lead. The verdict from the pubs, the living rooms, and the workplace canteens is damning. They see a vacuum where leadership should be. They see panic where resolve should be. And they see a prime minister who looks less like a statesman and more like a victim of events he cannot comprehend. The narrative has escaped the Beltway. It is now driving the national conversation. People are asking fundamental questions. Is anyone actually in charge? Who is running the country while the government fights itself? These are questions that destroy administrations. The sense of drift is terrifying for businesses, for families, for anyone relying on stability. And into this void steps the narrative of betrayal, the idea that the government is so consumed by its own internal survival that it has forgotten the people it was elected to serve. This is the fertile ground that Farage plowed, and the seeds of discontent are sprouting at terrifying speed. The public is not just watching, they are judging, and the judgment is harsh, unforgiving, and likely irreversible. The emotional bond between leader and nation has snapped, and in the silence that follows, the sound of crashing authority is deafening. The political mechanics of this disaster are brutally simple. Momentum is the only currency that matters, and Starmer is bankrupt. Reform UK and Nigel Farage has seized the initiative with a ruthlessness that has left the Labour machine gasping for air. By framing the chaos as a direct result of Starmer's incompetence, Farage has simplified the complex web of parliamentary procedure into a single, devastating story. The Prime Minister is weak, and the country is unsafe in his hands. This message is cutting through with the efficiency of a scalpel. While Labour spin doctors try to explain away the dissent with nuanced briefings, Farage is painting in primary colors, bold, loud, and impossible to ignore. He is defining the terms of the battle, forcing the Prime Minister to fight on ground that has already been lost. Every moment the government spends denying the chaos is a moment they are not governing, and Farage knows this. He is exploiting the vacuum, feeding the media beast with fresh angles, new attacks, and constant reminders of the government's paralysis. The contrast is stark and damaging. Farage appears in control, articulate, and driving the agenda, while Starmer appears besieged, reactive, and diminishing in stature. This visual disparity is fatal in modern politics. Power migrates to where it is perceived to reside, and right now it is migrating away from Downing Street. The polls are beginning to twitch, showing the early tremors of a massive shift. The underlying data suggests that the soft support Labour relied on is crumbling, turning to dust as voters look for strength and find only confusion. The sheer speed of the collapse signals a fundamental fragility in the Labour project. It took only one well-placed blow to crack the foundation. This suggests that the rot was already deep, that the unity was always a sham, and that the authority was always borrowed. Farage didn't create the cracks. He just applied the pressure that made them visible to the world. Now, the dam is breaking. Conservative MPs, seeing the water in the water, are joining the fray, sensing that the government is wounded. But the real threat comes from the insurgent right, from the relentless pressure of a movement that smells the end of an era. They are mobilizing, turning the screw, ensuring that the chaos does not subside but intensifies. This is a war of attrition, and Starmer is running out of supplies. His MPs are demoralized, his cabinet is silent, and his enemies are energized. The narrative of loss of control is the most dangerous story in politics because it is self-fulfilling. The more the Prime Minister tries to assert authority, the more desperate he looks, and the more control he loses. It is a trap with no exit. The media, sensing the terminal decline, has switched into death watch mode. Every stumble is magnified, every pause is analyzed for weakness. The feedback loop is screaming at maximum volume. The government is not just fighting a political opponent, they are fighting the laws of political gravity, and gravity always wins. The collapse is not a possibility. It is a process that is already underway, moving with the unstoppable force of a landslide. As night falls over Westminster, the question is no longer if the crisis will deepen, but how catastrophic the endgame will be. We are staring into the abyss of a total leadership collapse. The frantic meetings, the desperate phone calls, the hushed conversations in the corridors, they all point to one terrifying conclusion. The game is up. Starmer is clinging to the wreckage, but the tide is pulling him out to sea. The future of the government hangs by a thread so frayed it is barely visible. If he cannot regain control within hours, not days, but hours, the slide will become a freefall. The mood is apocalyptic. There is a sense of finality in the air, a recognition that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. The threat to the Labour Party is existential. If they cannot stop this revolt, if they cannot silence the narrative of weakness, they face not just electoral defeat, but political annihilation. The voters are watching, and they are unforgiving. They see a party at war with itself, a leader at war with reality, and a country left to drift. The betrayal is total. The countdown has begun, taking away the final seconds of an authority that has already died in spirit. Every statement from Downing Street now sounds like a eulogy. The paralysis is absolute. The panic is total.
So we are left with the ultimate questions that will define the coming days. Can a leader who has lost the room ever regain the country? Is this the moment the dam finally bursts, sweeping away the entire administration in a torrent of public fury? Or is there one final desperate act of survival left in the tank? The evidence suggests the end is near. The script has been written, the actors are in place, and the tragedy is entering its final act. The silence from number 10 is not the silence of calm, it is the silence of the grave. Britain waits, breathless and angry, to see if the government falls or if it merely rots in place. But one thing is certain, the illusion of control is gone forever. What happens next will shake the foundations of this country. Are you ready for what comes when the government finally falls?